let's tweak our rig. So let's see where. That's probably not a good effect. Let's go into edit mode for the bones. Let's move these further away and see who their parent is. Their parent is no one. I'm going to make another bone. In fact, snap cursor to center, Shift A, and this bone I'm going to make it the root of all bones. Scale on to Z0. And I'm going to make this guy child of the root. Same thing with the hips. And the thighs. And let's try the hips. Hips. Alright. Go back to pose mode. Move the whole guy, that's good. The hips. Hips kind of moves the whole guy too. Except for the pull targets in the ground. I could detach the thighs from the hips, but I think that's good for now. Let's see. That's not good. Let's select this mesh, go into weight painting, and here, Control Tab, weight paint. Let's turn on our vertex masking so we can select that vertex and see that, okay, that's on the left hand, but there's also a right hand one. Let's just get rid of that right hand one. And the one over here on the right, it's the reverse situation. Let's just get rid of that. And hope there's not more. There probably is. This is rotating. This is affecting the feet, which is kind of interesting, but not what I want. So let's go in here and see the parent of the feet. Let's Control Tab and tab into that. The feet have the hips, which we don't want anymore. I think the feet should have root. Root. So now, that's pretty neat. A little silly looking, but good to play around with it a little, just so you know that you don't have any stray vertices like I did. One more thing we can do, well, there's like a million things we could do, but one more thing we're going to do is, why not, for this bone, we never really want it to go through the ground, right? So fortunately, Blender has a constraint for that. So Control Shift C, and we just say floor, and Control-Shift-C, floor. And then we do something like lowering here. These feet will never go through the floor. Now, that's just this bone. So if I rotate this bone, you know, I can push the toes through there. But if I wanted to, I could add the constraints to the other bones too. We'll see if we need to later. Alright, let's add some action constraints to the hand. You know, this wrist is a little off. And now that I'm looking at it, these fingers are just a little bit off. I'm going to hide that for a second and be able to better see. Just going to select these and do a Alt-S, holding the Shift key, and just bring them up a little bit heavier. Bring the thumb up. Let's see, Alt-S, hold the Shift key. I might have brought this in just too much. Alright, so that's better. And Alt-H, switch to pose mode. Oh, you know, let's switch back, go into edit mode here. In aligner bones, so they're bending in the right spot. All right. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Alright, let's go into pose mode and move our fingers into position. Alright, now these edges here look like they should be weighted a little bit more evenly with the hand, so let's just look at weight painting for a second, and sure enough they're not weighted on there. Let's add them. And vertex masking, Shift K. Now they bend a little nicer. Back to posing. Let's bring this down, the thumb. We can rotate the thumb in. Doesn't maybe have to be all the way. This looks like this should be weighted too, actually. Let's there we go. That looks a little better. Let's look at this from the bottom. Alright, Alt B. Look at this from the side. Looks more like my fist, though the weighting I'm not convinced. I think the weighting on this should be less on the hand. Here's the hand. Let's go in here. And that to the thumb as well. Let's try these two. It's shared with a hand. Alright. Honestly, this finger could be a little longer. But that's pretty good. go ahead and select those bones, and I'm going to key them on their location and rotation. And then I'm going to go up 10 frames, shift up arrow to frame 11, and I'm going to clear their rotation and their scale, or I'm sorry, their rotation and their location. And I'm going to key it again. I'm going to switch over to our dope sheet. I actually did that in reverse order. So let's look at just the action. Let's name this too while we're here. Fist L action. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab those, move them over here, and grab these, move them back to, let's see, there's one, and then there's 11. Doesn't have to be 11. There we go. So now, if we were to take a peek at our 3D window, you can open and close that. Now let's just make a fake action. A fake user. And I'm going to move us back to the original position and then detach this. Go to our 3D view, Alt B. There we go. Now let's go into edit mode for the bones. Look at this from the side. Do a Shift D. And then I'm just going to scale it along the Z. 0. I'll set its roll to 0 too. And let's name this Fist L. And let's name this one Fist R. And then what we're going to do is scale this guy. So, and this is not a deformed bone. Let's make sure we deselect that there. So let's go back to pose mode, and in our bone we can say we're not going to change this guy's location or his rotation, and only going to scale along the Y. We'll do the same for this one. I'm just left click and dragging along these locks. Now we need to make an action. So we can do Control-Shift-C again, or we can come over here and just say, there's our action constraint. We made the action. Now we're making the action constraint. Targets the armature. We want Fist L is the bone, and the action is Fist L action. We're going to do it on the Y scale, and I think we're going to do it in the world space. And then we're going to set the target range. So when this thing is at 100%, that'll be on frame 1. And when we scale it to 50%, it'll move the action to frame 11. And scale it. There we go. And one more thing, the action should be the first thing to occur. There. Now, again, we're going to select these, and well, actually we want all of these, but not this one, to be copying this guy's constraints, pose, constraints, copy to selected bones. Now remember, this bone did not need to limit its rotation, and this bone did not need to limit its rotation. So let's see. There we go. There's our fist. So now we've got an armature action that we can just scale up and down to open it. Realistically, for how I'm using this guy, we're just going to be keeping his fist. Alright, so now we'll do the left arm next, but first let's save. Alright, let's hide the tool shelf properties. Move that in. Open up the action editor again. Middle mouse button, drag that over. Let's select our fist action. Give ourselves some more room. What I'm going to do is do we have that? Let's make sure that's cleared. Alt G, Alt S. There we go. So I'm going to come over here. And then I'm going to select everything. I'm going to say copy pose. I'm just going to move up a little bit. And then I'm going to say paste X flipped pose, and then I'm going to just select these bones and key them, location and rotation, and then I'm going to duplicate this action. I'm going to call this fist R action, and then move these keyframes over, and I'll bring this back to frame 1, and I'll do Alt R, Alt G, and I'll key those, location, rotation. So we've got that hand going. This is our right hand, so we don't need those. Should be just our right hand. And let's just switch back to our left hand and get rid of these ones that we added. We don't really need those there. And we can disconnect that again. Now let's come back to these and add our action constraint. Let's pop that up. The target is the armature, the bone is the fist, R this time. We want the Y scale, and let's I just have to look again. 1.5, 111, world space, okay. This time our action is our right. So let's test it. That looks good. And now we should just apply it to all the other bones. Make sure that's the active one. Pose, constraints, copy to constraints. Come on here and get rid of our limit rotation. Come on this. Get rid of limit rotation. Test it. Looks like a good fist. Great. File. Save as. Before we go any further, I want to do a little tweaking in this guy's mesh again. So I'm just going to select all, clear the scaling with Alt-S, and the rotation with Alt-R, and I'll do Alt-G even though I don't believe I moved anything. And take a look at his proportions. So actually, let's bring this down, switch it to outliner, hide the armature, select the mesh. First thing I want to do is look at this with our subsurfacing on, because you notice how subsurfacing, it does make some things smaller, look smaller than when it's just with, you know, just the faces. So I want to adjust that or compensate for that, since I'm going to plan to render that. So for example, I still think his legs are a little bit on the thin side. I think as a superhero, I think his proportions can be a little bit more dramatic, like making his hands could be a little larger. And most of these changes will be super easy and won't affect anything that we've done so far. So for example, looking at his legs, I think I'd take it all the way down to here, and then I'm going to start out by doing an Alt-S to scale along the normals and hold the Shift key to limit it. And now I'm going to go ahead and view the mesh with the subsurfacing on. You know, I'm not worried now as I was earlier about doing something dramatic and having these real weird angles. Or we've got a pretty stable mesh. We're just tweaking. So now I'm going to do a scale also along the Y. And I'll take these and I'll scale this up. We still have our x-axis mirroring on, so we're good with sizing that. His forearms could scale up a little bit too. In fact, I'm going to just scale those along the normals. Let's look at this from here. So let's scale along the Y. I'm just going to scale up some more there, and maybe also his wrists. I'm just going to do an Alt-S again, holding the Shift key. I don't know what's going on with that thumb. I have a feeling it's related to the weight. So I'm not going to touch that yet, or try and fix that. I'm going to take a look at. I'll take a look at the bones first. I take the hand, and in the case of the hand, I'm going to do a scale I'm going to do scale 1.1, like 10% up. Hopefully we won't have to mess with our bones too much. And then just I think that's okay, actually. Something easy to do to affect proportion is changing the size of his head. This again, I'm going to do just a scale. And then look at it from the front. And you know, if you want a thinner superhero, this guy was starting to look a little bit like, reminded me of the very early Spider-Man when Steve Ditko was drawing, where he was a very lanky teenager. And if you want that look, you're welcome to do that. But since I'm probably in the minority at being familiar with Spider-Man from the 1960s, I think I'll just bulk this guy up. Let's make sure our proportional's on for this one. And let's look at our rig. And the bones really are pretty good. They really have not moved much. We made such a slight change there. Let's just make sure we didn't do anything bad. And this makes me want to just thicken up the fingers just a little bit more. Look at this from the top. And for doing the thickening, we'll do Alt-S again. I'm just going to do Alt-S. Bring them a little bit wider. I'll bring this out. I don't know what's going on with this. I'm just going to pull it in. And now let's take a look at that. That looks better. I like that. I like that more. If we need to tweak more, we can.